I read 15 books last year. Some were great, some were good, some, well, made me want to read something else. The concepts and lessons I want to talk about in this video don't come from any books that made any sort of best books list from last year, but I still think that they had some value, and maybe they will to you too. So without further ado, here's what I learned from the books I read in 2025. The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, hopefully you can see that okay, by one Carl Jung. This book I had some difficulty with. I started it and I probably stopped, I would say, a third of the way through. It just got dry and very academic for me, and I waited about a year to come back to it, and I finally came back to it and finished it. And there's a huge concept from this book. Well, two huge concepts, Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, literally the title, but those two concepts are really worth knowing. My understanding of an archetype is that they are ancient patterns of being. So to give you an example, one archetype is called the trickster. And two examples of the trickster archetype, I think, are Loki from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Joker, really from just the Batman universe. And you can understand the trickster archetype if you look at Loki and the Joker, and you look at their patterns of behavior, and you're able to discern commonalities between them, and then you can think to yourself, gotcha, okay, so the trickster archetype is very much about chaos and just kind of, in a sense, watching the world burn. That would be the more negative side of the trickster archetype. There are some positive aspects that you can get from the trickster, but overall, I hope you get my point. Now, term number two, the collective unconscious. That is a term that Jung coined when he observed that humanity has sort of a shared language in the fact that we dream. Dreams really are their own language, and they come from the unconscious. They sort of bubble up. And Jung's observation is that across cultures and across time periods, this language has been very similar or the same. And that's pretty incredible. It indicates that there is a shared aspect of our unconscious, even though, someone in the West, who was positioned in America didn't necessarily communicate with somebody positioned in Russia, but yet they share this common language of dreams and archetypes. And that, if I've done any good job of explaining the collective unconscious at all, is the collective unconscious. And this book really goes into the Jungian perspective on dream analysis and what the unconscious through our dreams can tell us. And it's really fascinating. The other book by Carl Jung that kind of goes into that is called Man and His Symbols. I'd highly recommend Man and His Symbols. This was much more academic for my taste, but still, nonetheless, the concepts, they're very interesting concepts. Next, we have perhaps even more of an academic book than Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, and that is Paideia, The Ideals of Greek Culture. Now, why on God's green earth would I have picked up this kind of book? Well, I was fascinated with education, specifically in America and the West, and kind of how it was going, and I sort of asked myself the question, how are people educated back 2,000 years ago when there was no public education system? Everybody wasn't dumb, like they must have learned some things somehow. And the Greeks are considered the fathers of Western civilization. They created philosophy through Plato and Aristotle. And so how the heck did they pull that off if there was no education system? So that was the question I wanted to answer. And this book details exactly how they did it in Greece. And if you've ever just been on the couch and asked yourself, gosh, why does all philosophy start with Plato? I'm sure that's a common occurrence that comes up in your life. Well, let me tell you why all philosophy starts with Plato. See, this book shows you how Plato's dialogues, they are actually a distillation and a synthesis of Greek values that came to the Greeks through the telling of myths, of ancient myths. So you have things like the Greek tragedies, you have the Odyssey, you have the Iliad, and then of course you have songs and music that was sung by bards around a campfire, like Witcher-style campfire bards. And those songs that the bards sang at all those campfires, they were about heroes across the West, or at least across ancient Greece, that if you look at them, they emulated a certain kind of character and they had values. And that's how people in ancient Greece were educated in terms of morality and values. They listened to the songs, They watched Greek tragedies, and through these myths and stories, that's how they were able to transmit to their culture what is important from a perspective of morality and virtue. And so what Plato did was, got it, I see all that, I'm just gonna lasso around that, pull that down, I'm gonna write it all down into these dialogues. So why does all philosophy start with Plato? Because Plato was the first person to have written the values from those myths down onto paper in a non-myth story kind of way. He just said, here's what they are, and I'm going to convey through the dialogues of Socrates and the common folk of Athens what these dialogues are, what these values are, what they're about. And so that's what you saw Socrates doing. He debated the nature of piety and virtue and honor and all those things. Anywho, that is Paideia, the ideals of Greek culture, very academic, and those are the lessons that I derived from this book. Up next, we've got Mastery by Robert Greene. This book, they're kind of lengthy. All of Robert Greene's books, like 48 Laws of Power, I mean, you know, they're 300 pages plus, and they kind of get a little repetitive, which is a bit why I don't have this on any like best books list. 48 Laws of Power is especially repetitive, too repetitive for my taste, but Mastery, this one was good. This one I would recommend to probably somebody in middle school because they're about to enter a very important period of their life where they should probably understand how they should handle looking for a mentor and what kind of vocation they should put their attention to and how they should cultivate skills. And that's kind of all outlined in this book. And Robert Greene does it in his, classic style of looking throughout history and watching how the masters throughout history sort of honed their craft over time through apprenticeships and getting out in the world and discovering things. Robert Greene believes and says in this book that everyone has a gift, and he calls it a life task. Everyone has a life task to find out what that gift is. I would probably want 7th graders to read this book. I think they can manage it just fine, and I think it's super useful and informative. Next on the list, we've got a little book I like to call Boundaries. The authors like to call it that too, hence they've entitled it Boundaries. Sometimes I have trouble with boundaries. What can I say? So, picked up this book, read it, and in it, it had the idea each one of us is like a piece of property. You have to think mentally of yourself as a piece of property. And what people say and do can infringe upon your property. And you sort of feel when that happens. And when you feel when that happens, you gotta think to yourself, they've crossed the property line. And depending on what they do, they might damage my property. And if that is what their intention is, or what it ends up happening, you need to set that boundary, or else you, as a piece of mental property, you will deteriorate. So protect your property as if it was your own, because it is. Now we're on to ninja selling. This book, I had to read this book because I was in a brief little moment I was in real estate. And this book is actually a pretty good one. It is about the process, if you are an established realtor, of maintaining a system of clients in a very productive and lucrative way without being too salesy about it. But to quote Atomic Habits, this book is all about systems. It is a system of selling. It's how to keep your friends close and your clients even closer. And who doesn't like a close client who is clearly not a clerical, I don't know where I'm going with that. But anyway, next one. Where'd you go, Stoner? My guy. I did make a video about this one and it just has stuck with me, and it was worthy of mentioning again, but Stoner by John Williams has excellent prose. I only gave the book a 6.5 out of 10. I think I stand by that, but it just has excellent prose. It's only 250 pages. I think it was a legit page turner. It's sort of like, it's really hard to describe. It's like a master class of how relationships evolve when you don't actively participate in them. That's the best way I could possibly put it. I suspect that John Williams probably captured the feeling of a lot of people during this time. And so that's probably why it's considered a literary piece. In my view, it's also a warning to artists. There is a character in this book who clearly has artistic ability, very talented, yet she doesn't cultivate that for a number of reasons and becomes very bitter and resentful about it. And so that's the warning to artists. It's like, if you have an artistic side, do not suppress it because bad things will happen. So That's Stoner by John Williams. It might be more of a mood book, I don't know. But it seems to be popular right now on BookTube, so last but not least, I have a book that I read in Q4, I think, of 2025, and that is Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection. I had so many people hype Brené Brown up to me. I was super excited to read any work of hers. Started with this one and was kind of let down, not gonna lie. But nonetheless, there's an idea that I took from this book, I'm gonna shake the whole desk here, that I really did appreciate. And she is a researcher who likes to investigate shame and all of its properties. Wouldn't that be fun? But she talked about how shame does not like it when you name it and when you talk to other people about your shame. And she has examples of how she has dealt with this in her personal life. And I think they're really healthy. Like, I think it would work. And I do think it's true that shame does not like it when you talk about it. And when you call your friend up and say, hey, I felt shame in this instance, was really embarrassed, and X, Y, and Z happened, and your friend's like, oh yeah, like, that's happened to me before. I totally understand what you're going through. It does suck. But hey, we're all human and we're all trying to do the best we can. And shame hates that, absolutely hates that. It loathes it. So anyway, little hack in case you're feeling some shame. Maybe it'll help you get out of it. Alrighty then, so even though I don't talk about those books a whole lot on this channel, I still felt like they had value. And this video was about giving credit where credit was due, and I feel like I've done that. So if you got any value out of this video, hey, my job is done. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.